Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode 101. That's right. We are calling this the first episode of season 5 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we are coming to you once again from the international headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia. So I'm going to call this a special episode because we are once again highlighting the Backpack Weekend Food Program with the Executive Director, Leigh Spach. But we originally highlighted this program way back on episode 5. But another reason this is a special episode is that Leigh was actually on the very first episode, 100 episodes ago, in her previous life with the United Way. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. But Leigh, it's great to have you on, and welcome back to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So, as usual, we're going to get right to it. But first, we're not going to let you off the hook. So if somebody wants to, maybe somebody can go back and to episode 1 and see if any of these answers are the same.
Okay.
But first, just, Leigh, tell us a little bit about yourself. Then we'll get into the organization, but maybe start with that anything you want to share, and then how did you end up where you are with the organization?
So I've been in Gaston County for 18 years now, and as I famously say, I got drug across the river by my husband, Fred Spach. I was born and raised in Charlotte. I was very content there, and he came over and found me, and here I am.
Good for us.
Yes. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. But anyway, I've been in the nonprofit world for about 16 years. Before that, I was in commercial real estate. And when I moved to Gaston County, I had an opportunity to start working with the Alliance for Children and Youth, which I did for about 7 years on a part-time basis because I still had all the kids home. Then to United Way, as you said, and I was there for 10 years. And here I am at the Backpack Weekend Food Program. Wasn't really looking for the position. I was approached by Carolyn Niemeyer to see if I would have an interest. I thought it sounded like a great opportunity and career advancement for me, so here I am, and I'm very happy to be in the program. I have 3 children, a bonus son, as I call him, Adam, and William and Melissa. Melissa just got married this past Saturday, so I'm still trying to come down off that high and get back into reality.
Yeah, I haven't dealt with that yet, but maybe one day we will.
Oh, now you got 2 college graduates. You never know.
Absolutely.
So that's a little bit about my story.
Okay, so I appreciate you sharing that. And so let's get into the Backpack Weekend Food Program. So what is the mission? What is it that you're trying to say or maybe accomplish on a week-to-week basis? And just, there may be some listeners who may not be familiar with, the organization. So just kind of get into anything and everything that you'd like to share that, you think that might be good for our listeners to hear.
Well, our mission is to provide nutritionally balanced meals over the weekend for students that would otherwise go hungry within the Gaston County school system. And I would like to emphasize meals because there are other programs out there that provide snacks for children. These are nutritionally balanced meals. We work very closely with Caramount Health and their nutritionists to make sure that they are nutritionally balanced for an elementary age student, a middle school student, and a high school student. As you can imagine, after having high school students, they eat a lot more
It's
than
different for sure. Yep.
Yes, an elementary student would. So the meals provide breakfast, snacks, proteins, vegetables, fruits, milk. It's all across the gamut, so these kids have good food. And studies have showed us that if a child comes to school hungry, they are not going to learn. They're going to be distracted. They're going to distract the classroom. Their grades are affected. Their attendance is affected. And the surveys that we get back from the social workers and the teachers at the end of the school year show a progression of improvement in most of these children. Now, we're not going to be able to make a difference in everyone, but I just can't imagine a child being hungry over the school year. We started in 2011. Carolyn Niemeyer founded the program, I think, as most people in this community probably do know. We just had our first pull order day yesterday, and that is our day where we go into the warehouse and literally pull the orders for our partners to pick up. We are in 45 schools, and we have 45 partners, which equates to about 500 volunteers, if you can believe that. So This program is very dependent upon our volunteers.
So I wonder, going back to 2011, the first time that a child was served to now, when you talk about 500 volunteers and 45 schools, I wonder what do you know what it was like that first few times, that how many kids was it a single school? How did it start? You know, compared to, because I mean, 500 volunteers, I can imagine it was quite a little bit different now than it was back in 2011.
Well, it started, Carolyn gave opportunity for all schools to be a part of it, and it actually started in her daughter's bedroom. She called her daughter's twin beds her desk in her office,
right.
Which is funny.
That's typical probably for stuff like this.
Absolutely. And she hand wrote every ticket. We now have a database, and I believe that Carolyn, and don't hold me to this, but I do believe that she said there were about 50 students the first year that they did this.
Okay.
Last year we served 900.
Okay.
And yesterday we pulled orders for 662 students, and that number will continue to increase over this year.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, that's a significant increase to say the least. And often I think I say this a lot of the episodes that we've had on is things like this often start with an individual or a few people who have a vision, or they see a need in the community and they say, okay, why not me, right? Why not us to go solve some problem? And that's ultimately probably how a lot of organizations that do such good work around not just our community, but any community, that's kind of how they get started. Can you talk about some, I'm not sure initiative is the right word, but maybe describe the life in the month, in a month or a week at the the Backpack Weekend Food Program. So what's going on? You talk about 500 volunteers, just initiatives, maybe even, I know there's some events maybe that you guys are involved with and have each year. So just maybe, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So I mentioned we had our first pull order day yesterday. So the life in the day and the month of the Backpack Weekend Food Program. Summers are our time off, so to speak.
Sure.
Ha ha. But that's our time to regroup and organize and get ready for the next school year. We work with, as I said, the nutritionists as the first step. Then our next step is U.S. Foods. We are able to buy under Caramont's umbrella through U.S. Foods at a discounted rate. If that weren't the case, I don't know if Backpack would exist. Okay. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but food prices have gotten a little high.
Yes.
So we work with U.S. Foods. We have 3 different menus. Menu 1 and Menu 2 are simply for variety, so you don't get tired of eating the same thing. Menu 3 is for our long weekends. So once those menus are established and the food orders are placed each month, we go into the warehouse, the food's delivered. The following week we go in for our pull order day, and we have about 30 volunteers that pull the orders for each partner, as I had said before. They're put on a pallet, so we'll use First Presbyterian of Gastonia, one of our partners, as an example. All of their food for Greer and Ashbrook is put together, and their designated volunteer picks it up, takes it back to the church, organizes it however it works best for them, and they deliver the food every Thursday to the school that they're designated to deliver to. So the church really takes over after the pull order day. Part of my responsibilities is finding money for this program to work. We have no state funding. We have no federal funding. We are totally reliant on grants and community support. And I will say that Gaston County has been a wonderful support for this community. I think Gaston County is behind this program. I think everyone understands that children should not go hungry, and it is not their fault that they are in the situation they're in. We are having our only fundraiser of the year, which is Dining at the Chef's Table. It will be held November 4th at 6 p.m. at the Gaston Country Club, and we're switching it up this year. We're going to have a little more casual vibe and some fun things that I won't reveal quite yet. Okay. So follow us on social media, Facebook.
Okay. So you may have mentioned this at the very beginning, but when did you become executive director? How long has that been?
It's been a year and a half, just about.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm still new. I'm trying to figure some of that out.
But still, time does kind of go by pretty fast. So looking back at that year and a half, can you, something that I think our listeners like to hear about is can you think of something specific, an anecdotal story that you've seen or heard from a school, a teacher, a church, maybe just something that you can share of, wow, this is the impact. This describes the impact that we are trying to make, and then anything that you can share like that, a success story or something. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I've actually got two. Last year, when we got surveys back, so this would have been May of 2022, the one that hit me the most was a mother that wrote in to thank us for the program, because she told us because of the Backpack Weekend food program, she was able to pay her rent, buy the meds that her child needed, which were important ones, and pay the utilities, keep a roof over her head, and provide food during the week, all because she didn't have to worry about buying food on the weekend.
Right.
I mean, things as simple as she listed underwear, socks, toothpaste. I mean, basic needs, y'all. So that really touched me. It touches me now. So I know she's not the only parent that feels that way. Another one that touched me was a teacher sent in this past year, a student that the first day of school came to school dirty, like filthy, dirty hair, dirty clothes. They have a laundry facility on the site, so they were able to wash the clothes and give the child clean clothes. They immediately signed this child up for the Backpack Weekend food program, and as the school year progressed, her attendance improved, her grades improved, her attitude improved. I'm saying her. I don't know if it was her, because we don't know if it's boy, girl, or who the student is, but that student really thrived because of the program. They were happy to come to school, especially on Thursdays, because they knew that they were going to get that bag to go home for the weekend. So we're making a difference.
So this might be a silly statement, but it is, to make sure our listeners understand, somebody might not be familiar with it, it's self-evident in the name, I think, but it's literally providing food for the weekends when the kids aren't at school. So in theory, some of these kids are being fed Monday through Friday, and you mentioned it could be long weekends, of course, or teacher work days or whatever, where they are missing maybe school, but it's just literally providing nutrition for children through the weekend. I'm assuming the backpack thing is just because it's either in bags or they're provided backpacks or they're filling their backpack to take it home. I mean,
correct.
Right? That seems silly to bring that, but sometimes I make assumptions that I shouldn't make about organizations and what people know about them, because I'm through you and my involvement in the community. I mean, I'm exposed to these things all the time. So yeah, is there something in the last year and a half you're most proud of accomplishing since you've been with the organization? Or did you just tell us two things?
Well, those are success stories from the program, not really my success, I don't guess. So one of the things that was a real challenge for me and completely outside of my wheelhouse and still is completely outside of it, the database that we currently have is housed at Caramont and run by a volunteer at Caramont.
Okay.
The program has to have this database. It completes the menus that I spoke about earlier. It creates invoicing. I mean, it is an absolute necessity. So a year ago, we were told by the volunteer at Caramont that she was no longer going to be able to help us out because of her real paying job obligations.
Work gets in the way sometimes, huh?
It sure does, which we completely understood. So anyway, fast forward, we found a company out of Charlotte called Aparo, and I think every nonprofit in Gaston County needs to know about this. They help nonprofits with their technical needs. We paid a $250 fee. They put together a volunteer team of experts that could help us come up with the database that we needed. This has been a 1.5 year long process. It was a very expensive process, so my challenge was to find money to pay for the database, which I have successfully done, I will say, and that is in part thanks to Gaston County community supporting us. The database is being built as we speak. It should be up and running, in theory, by November.
Okay.
So we'll run both databases side by side to make sure that the new one is working correctly, and if there are tweaks that need to be made, it will, but the old one will continue to work so that the children will continue to get the food. But I feel pretty proud about that.
Oh, wow, that's good. So you said Aparo?
Aparo.
How do you spell that?
APPRAO, I think. I'm the world's worst speller.
Okay, that's interesting. That was something I have not not familiar with.
Yeah, CAM also used them for a database that they had and had great success as well. So it's a great thing to know.
All right. No, that's good. Yeah, I mean, obviously limited staffs and small organizations doing big things. So, we like to hear when organizations are maximizing, the volunteer work and who we're serving, who's being served, as opposed to spending a lot of money on administrative stuff like that, right? So
we've outgrown Carolyn Niemeyer's twin beds and handwritten tickets.
Absolutely. I completely understand. So, it's good to hear the things that are happening with you and what you're doing, Leigh. So, looking ahead, right, that big question is, what do you foresee the next 5 to 10 years with the organization or sooner? That's kind of that classic question, but I don't know, things seem to change so fast. I'm not sure 5 or 10 years is a good question any longer because, sometimes it's 6 months, things are so different. But, I mean, what do you see, down the road for, the Backpack Weekend Food Program?
I personally would like to try to figure out a way that we could collaborate and work together with some of the organizations in Gaston County to see what we could do about providing food during the summer. I've had some conversations with the YMCA because we do not run our program in the summer because we don't know where the kids are. We don't have a way to find them and get to them. And I know that the Y and the Boys and Girls Club both have programs to help provide food. So I would like to see if there's a way for us to maybe, use the Backpack Weekend Food Program resources to help them. Don't know exactly what that looks like yet. Like I said, I've had some conversations. The other thing is, maybe in 5 years I'd like to be out of business because kids won't be hungry anymore. But I don't think that's the reality. So just making sure that the program is financially stable and viable and still needed. We've had conversations with Gaston County schools recently. I met with the interim, Steve Laws. As it turns out, he was a volunteer for the program years ago, so he assures me it is needed and is vital, as did Jeff Booker. So I think those relationship building skills with the community and especially Caremont Health and the school system are vital.
Okay, well, good. I mean, that's, like so many people we've talked to the last 2.5 years, it would be nice one day if some of these organizations are not needed.
Yes.
But, as you said, I'm afraid that's probably not going to be the case. You know what, in the summer, that's a good point, right? I mean, kids are still
hungry.
They just don't have access to the school, right? Like they do during the week especially. So that's interesting. But I appreciate that. Again, thinking a little outside the box over what you guys have been doing traditionally. So if someone called up today and said, Leigh, what's the greatest need right now for the organization, in the short term? Is it volunteers, or if you have 500, is that kind of settled for the 45 schools that you have at the moment? Is there anything specific or just donations, or what is the greatest need that you have at the moment?
Donations are always obviously appreciated, but to take that a step further so that the people listening and watching today understand, for $378, you can sponsor a student for the entire school year.
Okay.
That's the average cost of an elementary menu and the mid-high menu, so we just average it together. Right now, we have budgeted for about 190 students to be unsponsored, so that's right at $70,000. So it's a big number. People are probably asking, well, where do you get that money? It comes out of the general operating budget. So that's where it comes from. It comes from the grants and the other donations that we have, and we have to be fiduciary responsible for, budgeting and keeping within that budget. But that would be my number one thing. If you want to sponsor a student to be in this program, $378 can do it.
Okay.
And I think also
just barely over $1 a day.
Yes, exactly. You do math in your head really well.
Well, Naomi was whispering in my ear what that amount was.
I need somebody to whisper in mine sometimes.
Yeah. So that's good. So we've covered a lot in pretty quick. So is there anything that I haven't asked that I should have asked? Anything that you want to share? I mean, obviously we're going to, right before we finish, we want to make sure all of our listeners know how to find information about the organization, get in touch with you guys, anything like that. But anything I haven't asked that I should have asked, or something you want to share before we just shift gears slightly?
I don't think so. I think you've done a great job of covering
Okay,
it.
no,
I
I
hope I've done
you
a good
have.
job of answering the questions.
You have. Listen, if nobody knew anything about the backpack program, they would know what it is by this 15 or 20 minutes that we've discussed it, which is, again, that's the main point and what we're trying to get across out there. So, we do have a few questions that we like to ask, and we are, for our past listeners, we are shifting gears a little bit going forward this season. Just try to, maybe for the sake of time and maybe brevity, we're gonna shift gears a little bit. But we do want to hear from our guest a few things about Gaston County and just in general, some things that maybe that might be interesting. So I'm gonna throw you a few kind of speed round of questions here, Leigh, that are a little different than the first time you're on. Of course, that was 2.5 years ago. I don't even remember if we were asking these questions.
What the questions were.
I mean, 2.5 years ago, I can't remember. None would tell you. I can't remember last week here at GSM, much less 2.5 years ago. So, Leigh, what is your favorite activity? It doesn't have to be outside, inside, anything. Your favorite activity to do here in Gaston County when you're not saving the world at the backpack program?
I love to be outside,
Okay.
walking with my dogs, as you've seen me
Yep.
in your neighborhood.
Yeah, I have.
Like to switch it up and go on the trail out at the Warlick YMCA. I also like to do the thread trail down in
great.
Belmont. So if I'm outside being active, I'm happy and just absolutely love it. There's so much great things to do in Gaston County outside.
Yeah, the whole Go Outside campaign,
Yes,
that's
where'd that come
actually
from?
really is legitimate. And the trail system is actually, when we had the Carolina Thread Trail on, I was shocked
Yes.
just in Gaston County how many miles of paths and trails we have here that are mostly somewhat interconnected. Some of them are not, but man, there's no excuse not to go out and do some hiking and walking and running and exercise on all the trail system that we have here.
And I
So,
think
again,
that's the one thing, too, is people need to know Gaston County is really a great place to be.
oh yeah,
It truly is.
absolutely.
It gets bad reputation, but it
So
should
this
not.
I'm not sure I asked this question or not, but I'm going to ask it today. What is something very few people know about you?
Oh, my goodness, where do I start? Very few people know about me. Well, let's see, we'll just be honest. Very few people probably don't know that I was not the best student in the world, but I've overcome a lot of those challenges, and I'm proud of those challenges. I think another thing on a funny note is on Thursday, after I'm done working, I work remotely on Friday, and if we do not have somewhere to be, I do not put makeup on. And I stay in my workout clothes all weekend. If
That's
you
funny.
see me in the grocery store, you're going to see me as I am.
Oh, that's funny. But you did marry a wolfpacker, so
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. That was a mistake.
that might be your greatest.
Only college choice.
that might
Best
be-
man in the world.
That might be your greatest achievement there, Leigh, as far as
Could
I'm
be.
concerned.
Could be. I understand your scoreboard got struck by lightning.
Yeah, but those electrical engineers at NC State fixed it before the rain delay was over. So,
Excellent.
so there you go. We can fix things and break things. So how about, is there a book or blog or article or something? It can be anything that you've read. I used to say recent, but it doesn't have to be recent, actually, because I've shared some of the books I share are super old books. But anything you might share for our listeners that might be worth them taking a look at?
Absolutely, and all of my friends are going to laugh because they already know what I'm going to say. The book that I read about a year and a half ago called The Last Green Valley. If you have not read it, you have to read it.
Okay.
It is the best story. It is a non-fictional book based on a family that ends up, I'm not going to tell you too much more. Anyway,
No
it's a World
spoilers,
War,
please.
yes, it's a World War II
Okay.
that will really grip your heartstrings. Faith is involved. It's an incredible book.
Yeah, I love books about that time period. I mean, obviously, most of what I read is probably specifically about something going on in World War II, because I just finished one about an event in the Pacific theater. But I love that time period, and just so many things were going on and happening. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm always looking for my next book to put on my shelf that I might get to.
I think so. And I think the other just word of advice for everybody out there, don't let anybody ever tell you you can't do something, because you know what? You can do it.
I think you just answered my very last question, but I'll ask you again here in a second. But I like those couple of questions here, but this is a big question I like to ask, and you've kind of already shared a couple things, so you might just have to repeat yourself a little bit. But besides the Backpack Weekend Food Program, Leigh, why would you say Gaston County is such a great place?
I think the people. Number one, absolutely the people, the sense of community, the caring about the community, wanting Gaston County to be a great place. And as I said before and several times during this podcast, coming from Charlotte, you heard a lot of not great things about Gaston County, but right. I'm here to tell you they're not true. It's a great community.
Well, luckily, Charlotte is the gateway to Gastonia. I think I've mentioned that a few times, according to Saturday Night Live. So that's good. So again, I think you just answered this, but I'm gonna maybe make it a little more detail. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Don't be afraid to try things that scare you, that you think you'll fail at. I think people think failure is just that, failure, and the most horrible thing that could happen to you. But in reality, you learn from your failures, you become stronger from your failures, and you're better for them.
All right. That's a great way to kick off season 5, Leigh. And, and you're right, especially, gosh, I look back just a few years ago when I was 20. I don't have any big regrets, but there were a few things, I wish I had done or tried. I mean, I don't lose sleep over them, but I can easily pick out, a few things, and it was because of that, what somebody's going to think, or I might fail, or fear of failure, or whatever. I mean, it's at my age now, it seems silly, right? How I felt back then.
It does.
But at the time, it seems like a big deal, right? All right, so listen, Leigh, I appreciate you sharing that. So again, the main point here is to bring some recognition to the organization. So where can our listeners go to learn more and get in touch with you guys if they need to? Just anything and everything that you can share, so we can make sure we that's the main point here.
Our website, which is BWFPGC, which stands for Backpack Weekend Food Program, GastonCounty.com, has all of the contact information. You can donate on that page. You can learn more about our event on November 4th. I'm still working on details of getting more information on the website about that. So that would be what I'd encourage everybody to do.
Okay. And you guys active on social media as well at all, or have pages? Or
we are active on Facebook, and we are trying to figure out Instagram. We've had a technical glitch with it. So another challenge, but we'll figure it out.
Well, actually,
Facebook.
Naomi is an expert on social media.
Oh, there you go. We'll have to get in.
She's an expert. Between her and Amy, they've got it going on here. I have nothing to do with our social media. I can assure you that's why it's so good.
I can assure you that's why ours needs work, because I am involved.
Yeah, well, there may be, there's resources out there like these guys that could help you if needed as well. So, any last words of wisdom, Leigh, before we wrap this episode up? I appreciate greatly your time this morning.
I don't know about any words of wisdom, but thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate it very much. And I hope our listeners have learned a little bit about the importance of this program.
Well, good. We've been involved on and off and support the program when we can, and so again, I appreciate the work that you do to organize all of it and bring it together. But as you said, the volunteers and the other organizations that are involved, 500 volunteers, I think is the word, and 45 schools and 45, I guess. So I guess maybe the school, there's organizations or groups that kind of are focused on one or two schools. Is that what I heard you say?
Correct.
That's kind of how it works.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So so much of has to come together to make that happen, right? So, but I appreciate greatly the work of you and your organization. So,
well, we appreciate GSM support.
Well, you're very welcome, and that's kind of in our DNA and kind of what we hope to pass that along. The community's been really good to us, so that's kind of what's the point, of having a business here if you can't help the community on some level. So I guess to close this one out, I'm going to continue, at least for now, unless I run out of books to share. I'm going to share a book recommendation, a thought for the week. And I'm going old school here on another book by Dale Carnegie. He is most famous probably for his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But he wrote a lot of books, but one that I have recently read is called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Anyway, I just think the kind of like this organization we're talking about today, the title kind of speaks for itself. But I would especially in this world we're currently living in. It seems like there'll be a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of just strange things going on. But I would encourage you to check that one out. And my quote and thought for the week, I picked it on purpose because of the organization and the work that Leigh's doing in the community. But I picked it from Booker T. Washington, who said, if you want to lift yourself up, lift up someone else. And there's so many organizations like the one Leigh is leading that do exactly that. They are lifting others up in the community and doing some really good work. So to our listeners out there, thanks for coming back to Season 5 and listening to today's episode. And as we always ask at the end of each episode, please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast. And please don't hesitate to contact us here at podcast, our email address, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. We do have some topics and guests coming up. However, we're at episode 101, so we are looking for suggestions for new topics and guests coming up. So if you have any organizations out there, please contact us. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, GastonsGreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. And thanks again to Leigh for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Naomi Hunt and Amy Anderson from GSM Services. And I am your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.